Hello everyone, Lazy Titan here, coming at you with a new MLB The Show 25 video. In today's video, I want to do a year in review of MLB The Show 25. I want to talk about some of the positives I have of the game, some of the concerns I have, some of the wants I have from MLB The Show 26, and I also just want to do a channel update. So, just getting into the positives of this game, I think they've done a really good job this year with the content. I think all the programs after rolling in the Reds are some of the best programs we've had since I've started playing MLB The Show, which I admit was only MLB The Show 23. So this is really the first one I've had where it's not been sets and seasons. And I will say that sets and seasons was just kind of weird to me because none of the other major sports games do that. Madden 2K, they're all, lowest overall to highest at the end of the year. So I think it was a good try by SDS, but I think this is definitely the way to go going forward. I liked all the Hall of Fame, the evolution programs, the cornerstones, the spotlights this year were good. I like the addition of my legacy. I've done most of them. The innings pitched, walks, and triples, I am just not going to get done. But I enjoyed that. Team Affinity was good this year. We did get some of the, repeats like we normally do. Though admittedly, I don't think was there a Mets Piazza Team Affinity this year? I don't think there was. So the Mets got away with one there, I guess. Because normally the two I always see for the Mets is Mike Piazza, and maybe there was one and I don't remember it correctly, but I think the content was good. Weekend Classic was a great addition to the game. I don't play multiplayer that often, but I know a lot of people enjoy that mode. I do think it needs to be more often than it is. I think it needs to be bi-weekly rather than monthly. I think that's a more, appropriate schedule for that competitive mode. As a more single-player oriented player, Diamond Quest, I really enjoyed this edition. Early on in the year, I will say the maps were a little big, but throughout the year, I think they've really gotten it more towards where, I think the odds are a little lower, but the maps are smaller, and I'm okay with that. I think that so long as, I can play on, Hall of Fame or whatever and get the card, it's not as big a deal if the map is smaller because there's less moments to play, which, is a big deal because I think the good thing about Diamond Quest is it somewhat respects your time. Now, another thing I want to talk about was, outside Diamond Dynasty, I did play a little bit of Road to the Show. Of course, the big deal with Road to the Show for me in the beginning of the year was probably the best video I've ever done on this channel. Is the one about making stubs using the Road to the Show method where you just do the challenges over and over again, which obviously got nerfed pretty much 3 or 4 days after I made that video. And I'm pretty sure some other people made videos on that as well. So, sorry to the Road to the Show players that, the Diamond Dynasty players, effectively messed up their mode for getting equipment because they had to wait 10 games rather than getting it, as often as they should have been. But I do think Road to the Show, the colleges were a great addition. I think that they're going to continue to flesh that out in 26. I saw their initial post, the PCI sensitivity and all that stuff. I think that's all great going forward. The pitching rework, I hope, is good, especially the physics. I mean, curve balls and stuff like that are basically useless. And that's one of the concerns I have with this game. And I'm going to see if I can show that here in custom practice real quick. Is just the way pitching is in this game, especially with pinpoint. I don't know how it is with the other pitching styles, but with pinpoint, there are times where the ball just does not go towards the par. And I'll tell you what I mean. The par is the region where the pitch is supposed to go, and I understand that the par, it can touch the par, but I think it needs to be a bit more nuanced than that. I think that the ball needs to at least be, like a quarter of the way into the par, because, if I'm sitting here, and I didn't get perfect there, but the ball should at least be going more towards where I'm aiming it. Like at 97% accuracy, why is it going dead middle? And I understand I just put it on legend, but it shouldn't go dead middle. That's more understandable, because I feel like the way this should work really is if you throw it perfect, like, that's fine, I think. But if it's just touching, like if there's 1 pixel of the ball touching the par, I don't think that's okay. I think the ball should be at least a quarter of the way into the par at all times. And that should also be a strike. Because, pitching in general, this game doesn't call stuff on the black correctly. If I throw this ball, and we'll see if I even get anywhere close. I didn't throw it perfectly, so it's probably going to sail right into the strike zone. But if you're, pitching, that's a ball. Thank you. But there are times where, the ball will be 3/4 of the way into the strike zone and it's still called a ball. Perfect umpire needs to be perfect. If the ball is touching the black, it is a strike. That is a strike. But I've seen that called a ball. So that's one of the big issues I do have is with pitching is, just in general, and a lot of it has to do somewhat too with, we've gotten repetitive pitchers year after year. There's nobody really new to the meta. I hope there's no John Donaldson next year. I understand that, he's a big part of the NBL, the Negro Baseball League thing that they're doing, which is great and all, but there's a lot of players in that league, and I hope John Donaldson is not one of them next year. And I think I'm also okay with Randy Johnson taking a year off as well. Because there has been so many dominant lefties and not as many dominant righties. So, I want there to be a year of dominant righties for once. Just to shake things up. And that goes for just, legends in general. I wish we could shake up who the legends are every year. Get into more of the 2K Madden style of, we have at least 100-something legends that are, at least somewhat different. If I go in 2K, there's a bunch of legends there I've never even heard of. And they have probably 300 or 400 of them. And I'm sure it's some monetary thing with SDS. It's not as big a studio as 2K, obviously. And this kind of leads into pitching as well. Switch hitters are, I won't say an epidemic. I mean, they have their place. But I do wish that the players who are not switch hitters had more of a role. And, and I think that's kind of what they were trying to do with, the favoriting of which side you can throw the pitch onto, which I know is escaped my mind at just the moment now that I'm recording this video. But, that was one way I think they tried to do it, but that just doesn't work in a competitive environment. They have to find some way to make it so players who are, not of the same players of the same handedness as the pitcher can be, somehow rewarding to players without requiring them to have the handedness advantage. And basically what that means is you got to find some way for righty pitching batting matchups to be, more rewarding. And how do you do that? I don't know exactly how you do that. Either you have to, make the stats for switch hitters worse, or you need to, make it so that, yeah. I mean, really, at the end of the day, the only way you're going to really get rid of it is you got to make switch hitters just, statistically worse, which I don't really want to do. And, maybe that, if they get rid of par shrinkage or, PCI shrinkage, that'd do a lot for this, game as well, because that's a big reason why you can't have the same handedness is, if a slider's going away, they shrink the PCI for the same handedness, but not for the switch hitter. Which, I understand the advantage of opposite handedness, but that just seems like it's really just kind of cheating, They didn't want to, make it to where the game plays like it does in reality, even though they say it wanted to be, more lifelike. The the PCI doesn't shrink in real life. So, I think PCI shrinkage is a big deal, and I think they really need to look into doing something about that. And speaking of the PCI, I think the outer PCI has gotten too large, or they need to do something about the way that foul balls are timed up, because there's just way too many foul balls in this game. And here, I'll just play a Conquest match while I'm sitting here, ranting. I don't want to rant too much, but foul balls in this game in particular have just gotten a bit out of hand. And I think a big reason for that, and this is probably better than just me playing the Conquest game, which on All-Star, which I'm sure will be riveting, the vision stat for a lot of these cards is, which, in case you don't know, vision is, the stat there next to power left, is, the stat on how big is your outer PCI. And, eventually most cards, it gets extremely high. So those PCIs get real big, especially on All-Star and Hall of Fame. It's probably not as big. It's probably just as bad on Legend just because of the way how good people are. But, you can, and the CPU will do it too. They'll foul off 10 balls in a row. And it's really irritating. You're not typically seeing somebody foul off 10 balls a row in the major leagues. It's not happening, and especially not in the way that it's done in this game, where the ball is a good, 7-8 inches outside the strike zone and somebody's fouling it off, especially inside. You should not be fouling that ball off, an inside pitch 6 inches inside. That should be either getting popped up or you're missing it. Because, the bat is so narrow at that point. But that's my rant on foul balls and pitching and everything. Something I did want to talk about, in terms of mini seasons as well. Custom Stadium La Grassa, which in case you don't know what La Grassa is, I'll show you. It's a stadium that is basically, you bunt the ball and it's a home run. So this is the stadium that, got custom stadiums banned from multiplayer, all custom stadiums. Because, if you can bunt the ball for a home run every time, basically, PXP grinding's easy. Challenges for all the multiplayer programs are easier. The single player programs, just the normal programs. You're doing those in like a game. The captains, I just did the Blizzard captains. They took, a game. Because you hit like 20 home runs a game, which you can hit way more than that. But I just got, was just trying to complete the program, not trying to grind. But, they make the goals extremely easy for mini seasons. And that's how you make a ton of stubs now, is just grinding mini seasons on La Grassa. But going into 26, I think they're definitely going to, remove this stadium, obviously. Because this stadium would be really bad for the MLB The Show, SDS's bottom line, in terms of, the monetary money they're trying to make for next year. So I think La Grassa will definitely be, removed. And I don't know what that means for custom stadiums going forward, whether they're just going to have really a lot better quality control. Because in the past, the big issue with custom stadiums is the lighting, the background being, completely white or, gray. And so you can't see the ball. But this is obviously taken to an extreme where, you're scoring 100 runs a game or something like that, which, you just can't be. That can't be allowed in in a competitive mode like Diamond Dynasty, because it'll inflate the market out of control. And I think the only reason they allowed it to slide this year is because it really wasn't a big deal until, probably halfway through the game cycle. And the other big issue I've had with this year's game is crashes, especially on the lineup screen, switching players, the game freezes, you have to restart. I had this issue last year as well. When I played on PlayStation, I thought maybe this wouldn't be a big deal on Xbox, because I moved to Xbox this year. But yeah, I think that, they need to look into something about the spaghetti code of this game. I know, obviously, they don't probably have the resources to recode this entire game, but there's parts of this game where you can tell, this has been the same way it's been since, MLB The Show, 18 or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that I think they just need to, look at. And, from a technical perspective, early on in the year, we had the issue with the dreads once again. Why does the issue keep occurring every year? Manny Ramirez has dreadlocks. The game lags. That should not be happening. Now, I gotten over my rant and my concerns. There's other things out there, perfect outs, making contact hitters better. I guess one of the big things, other big things too, is, something's got to be done about outfielders. I had a game the other day where Yordan Alvarez, covered 40 yards and dove and took a ball away. Respect to Yordan Alvarez. The man is, amazing hitter, but there needs to be acceleration or something in this game, because guys go from 0 to 99 like immediately in the outfield, and that's just not realistic. I mean, what? Yeah, no. The super dives of, these terrible fielders in the outfield has got to stop, That's my rant on outfielders. But some of the wants I wanted for next year, one of them's already been taken care of. The pitching rework, we'll see how that goes. I already talked about the perfect umpire, how, they need to really get the balls on the black need to be strikes. Because especially with next year going into, the ABS system of, tap your helmet to, challenge the call on the field. With that being implemented in real life, as they say they want this game to be realistic, I think they really need to make it to where, the balls called on the black are strikes. Obviously, that'll probably lead to less offense, but one of the ways we'll get out of this issue with all these foul balls and everything is, people will, start getting called for actual strikes, and the games will be shorter. Which that's a big reason that I don't play a lot online right now is that, the foul balls are so bad, you waste like a good 3 or 4 minutes on each at bat, and it can make games really just drag on for forever. Now, the other one I really have, and this is really a nitpick, is in mini seasons, if you create a squad like I've created here, this was for the Venezuelan captains and the one of the other challenges for the recent Blizzard captains. But if I restart this match, if I restart this season by holding A, and I view and edit the roster, it has picked these random guys. I don't understand what the deal is with this game and why am I getting a 97 overall catcher from St. Louis? Some of this stuff here just makes absolutely no sense. Obviously they're all parallel 5 because of grinding on La Grasa. But why can many seasons not carry over my team from season to season? That's a really small one. Not a big deal for anybody probably other than me. But that's something I would really like to see going forward. Maybe a new single player mode. I don't really know what you would do other than maybe like a actual kind of, MLB season or something like that. Madden has this thing called the run where, it's not very rewarding, but for Madden, because, Madden, you got to spend, thousands of dollars to make your team at least decent. But, some sort of like, season challenge or something where you play like 10 games against the CPU, choose your difficulty, you get better rewards or something like that. Could be interesting. And then you have like a World Series kind of thing where you play like, a couple of games against, each team, against a couple of teams or something like that. Could be interesting. Just a thought that I have on that. And I guess the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about today is, just the channel in general. I started making some videos early last year for MLB The Show 25, and I really didn't feel like those videos were very good. And then I kind of got distracted by, work and some stuff outside of that I'm not going to get into. But I really want to hit MLB The Show 26 hard. I want this to be the first year I really get into content creation for this game and just in general. Because I really want to lean more into this. I needed a hobby to do, and this seemed like, something I could do on the side. So what I'm really trying to commit to is 3 videos a week. I don't know what days they'll be. There'll be 3 videos. I'll continue with the rankings like I've done previously, program reviews, maybe some gameplay. I'm not particularly good at this game, but, you may find it funnier for me to, be bad than, there'll be somebody out there a lot better than me you can watch if you want to watch somebody good. Maybe do some live streams here and there, maybe touch on some games that are not MLB The Show, such as, I've played Warframe. I've played a few other things, here and there, if the content's slow or something like that. But what I really want to do is I really want to hear, I don't know how many views this video will get. Probably basically nothing. But if you have any video ideas or things you would like to see, let me know. I'm really trying to commit to, building a community and stuff like that. So, let me know in the comments below. I hope you all have a fantastic new year. And I look forward to seeing you all on MLB The Show 26. So, with that being said, this is Lazy Titan signing out. Thank you.